I watched my father walk away from me as blood seeped through the makeshift bandages wrapped around my torso. The emergency room lights blazed overhead, while nurses prepared surgical instruments behind me. His phone rang, and I already knew who it was before he answered. Grace, my older sister. Through the haze of pain medication, I heard her sobbing about some work crisis. My father turned to me, his face twisting with irritation. "Stop being dramatic. You're not dying. Grace is devastated." Then he left. Just walked out of the emergency room while I lay there bleeding. The betrayal cut deeper than the gaping wounds in my side. That morning started like any other Thursday at Morton's Steakhouse. I arrived at 5:30 ready to prep for the lunch rush. As sous chef, I took pride in running a smooth kitchen. The smell of fresh herbs and sizzling beef usually energized me, but something felt off when I noticed Tyler, our newest prep cook, acting strangely near the fryer station. I'd been working at Morton's for 3 years, slowly climbing from line cook to my current position. At 28, I was younger than most sous chefs, but executive chef Marcus believed in my talent. The kitchen was my sanctuary, the one place where my skills mattered more than my sister's achievements. Tyler had only been with us 2 weeks. He seemed nervous that morning, constantly checking his phone and glancing at the back entrance. I should have paid more attention to those warning signs. Instead, I focused on preparing the special pan-seared salmon with lemon butter sauce. Around 10:45, I was carrying a tray of prepped vegetables to the walk-in cooler when it happened. Tyler suddenly jerked backward from the fryer, knocking over a container of hot oil. The scorching liquid spread across the floor just as my foot came down. I felt myself sliding my arms, flailing for balance. The tray flew from my hands as I twisted, trying to avoid the puddle of oil. That's when I saw the broken equipment cart someone had left near the prep station. My body slammed into it sideways, and I felt the sharp edge of exposed metal tear through my chef's jacket into my flesh. The pain was instant and overwhelming. I crashed to the floor, my right arm catching another piece of jagged metal on the way down. "Call 911!" Marcus's voice boomed across the kitchen. Through my blurred vision, I saw him ripping tablecloths from the dining room to press against my wounds. The white fabric turned crimson within seconds. My coworker Janet knelt beside me, her usually steady hands trembling as she helped apply pressure. "Stay with us, Ada. Help's coming." The ambulance ride blurred together, sirens, paramedics shouting medical terms, the sting of an IV needle. At Riverside General Hospital, they whisked me straight to the emergency room. A nurse with kind brown eyes explained they needed to assess the damage and prep me for surgery. "Is anyone coming for you, sweetie?" she asked while checking my vitals. "My dad," I managed to whisper. "Paul Morrison. I already called him." 40 minutes passed before he burst through the doors. Relief flooded through me at the sight of his familiar gray hair and worried expression. Dad had raised Grace and me alone since Mom died 8 years ago from breast cancer. He'd been our rock through that nightmare, and I needed him now. "Ada, what happened?" He grabbed my uninjured hand, and for a moment I felt safe. I started explaining about the accident when his phone erupted with Grace's ringtone, some classical piece she'd chosen to seem sophisticated. He frowned at the screen. "Don't answer that," I pleaded. "Dad, please! They're about to take me to surgery." But he was already pressing the phone to his ear. I heard Grace's dramatic sobs even from where I lay. Something about a promotion partnership, her career being over. The same catastrophizing she'd perfected since childhood. Dad's face shifted, concern for me replaced by panic for Grace. "Honey, slow down. What do you mean they passed you over?" "Dad!" I tried to squeeze his hand, but he pulled away, pacing near the door. "They're literally about to wheel me into surgery." He covered the phone briefly. "Grace just lost the partnership. 8 years of work down the drain. She's hysterical. I'm bleeding on an emergency table. That's when he said it, the words that shattered something fundamental between us. Stop being dramatic. You're not dying. Grace is devastated. Her whole future just got destroyed. The nurses have you handled here. He walked toward the door, still murmuring comforting words to Grace. I watched him go, my vision blurring with tears that had nothing to do with physical pain. The nurse returned to find me alone. "Where's your father, honey?" "He left." The words tasted bitter. "My sister called." As they wheeled me toward surgery, I caught sight of Dad in the hallway. He was leaning against the wall, still on the phone, gesturing animatedly. He didn't even look up as they rolled me past. That's when I overheard him say something that changed everything. "Your sister always exaggerates everything. Remember when she claimed she broke her wrist in high school, just a sprain? She'll be fine. Some stitches and she'll milk it for weeks. You're the one who needs me right now, sweetheart." The anesthesia mask covered my face before I could respond. My last conscious thought was a sickening realization this wasn't new. This was the pattern of our entire lives. Every achievement of mine diminished, every injury dismissed, every accomplishment overshadowed by Grace's need to be the center of attention. All those years I'd made excuses. Dad was grieving Mom differently. Grace was his firstborn. She reminded him of Mom. But lying on that gurney, abandoned and bleeding, I finally saw the truth. In his eyes, I would never matter as much as Grace. I was the supporting character in the family drama where she was always the star. The surgeon's voice drifted through the preoperative haze. "Significant blood loss, possible nerve damage. We need to move fast." As darkness took me, I wondered if Dad would even be there when I woke up. Or would Grace have another crisis that needed his immediate attention? The pattern was so clear now, written in years of missed recitals, forgotten achievements, and dismissed concerns. I'd spent my whole life trying to earn his approval, to be seen as more than Grace's little sister. But as the operating room lights blinded me one last time, I realized the truth that would change everything I was done trying to matter to someone who had already decided I didn't. Consciousness returned slowly, like swimming up from deep water. The first thing I noticed was the pain, different from before, duller, but somehow more frightening in its persistence. Machines beeped steadily beside me, and my throat felt raw from the breathing tube they'd used during surgery. "Ada, can you hear me?" A woman's voice, professional but warm. I forced my eyes open to find Dr. Martinez standing beside my bed. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 40s, with silver threading through her black hair and intelligent eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "The surgery went well," she began, but something in her expression made my stomach clench. However, the damage was more extensive than the initial assessment suggested. "You had a severe laceration to your lateral torso that required 37 stitches, but more concerning was your arm injury. My right arm, my dominant hand, the tools of my trade. You severed 2 tendons and damaged the radial nerve," she continued gently. "We were able to repair them, but recovery will be challenging. With proper physical therapy, you should regain full mobility, but it will take months of dedicated work. There was a period during surgery where, well, you lost a significant amount of blood. Another 30 minutes without treatment, and we might have been discussing very different outcomes." I tried to speak, but only managed a croak. She helped me take small sips of water before I could ask. "My career. If you follow the therapy protocol exactly, there's no reason you can't return to professional cooking. But Ada, I need you to understand how close this came to being permanently debilitating. Whoever left you alone during that critical window—" "My father had a family emergency." The lie came automatically, a lifetime of making excuses. Her expression suggested she wasn't buying it, but before she could respond, the door burst open. Maya Rodriguez, my best friend since culinary school, stood there with fury radiating from every inch of her 5'2" frame. "Don't you dare cover for him!" She rushed to my bedside, her chef's white stained and wrinkled like she'd come straight from her shift. "Marcus told me everything. How they found you alone bleeding out while your father chatted in the hallway about Grace's job drama." "Maya." "No, I'm done watching this happen." She pulled out her phone, scrolling through something. "You want to know how long I've been documenting this garbage? 3 years. 3 years of screenshots, recordings, and notes because I knew someday you'd need to see it." Dr. Martinez excused herself with a pointed look that said we'd continue our conversation later. Once alone, Maya thrust her phone at me. The first message was from 2 years ago. "Maya, thanks for keeping an eye on Ada during her birthday dinner. You know how she gets when she drinks, always trying to one-up Grace's stories. I appreciate you keeping her grounded." I'd had 2 glasses of wine that night. Grace had gotten so drunk she'd vomited in the restaurant bathroom. More messages followed. Paul asking Maya to redirect Ada's attention-seeking, thanking her for not feeding into the dramatics like some of Ada's other friends, praising her for understanding that Grace was going through so much and needed support while Ada was resilient and didn't need coddling. "He tried to make me his spy," Maya said quietly. "Wanted regular reports on your behavior. I told him to respect your privacy, but I kept every message because I knew this day would come." "What day?" "The day you finally saw what he's been doing to you." She sat on the bed's edge, careful of my injuries. "Ada, do you remember your graduation from culinary school?" "Of course I did. Dad had missed it because Grace had a bad breakup and needed him. He told everyone you understood that you even suggested he stay with Grace instead. But I saw your face when you realized he wasn't coming. You were heartbroken." The messages kept coming. Paul questioning why I needed such an attention-grabbing career when I could have gone into something stable like Grace's law path. Comments about my need to compete with my sister. Subtle digs wrapped in concern. "There's more," Maya said hesitantly. "Remember when you won the state culinary competition? My first major achievement. I'd created a 5-course tasting menu that had impressed all 3 judges. It was the proudest moment of my career. He told people you only won because Grace had helped you practice, that she'd given you the winning ideas. I heard him at the after party making sure everyone knew Grace was the creative genius behind your success." Each revelation felt like another wound opening. "Why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed me? You've spent your whole life making excuses for them. Dad's still grieving. Grace is under so much pressure. Family is complicated. You had to see it yourself." A knock interrupted us. Janet from work peered around the door, followed by Marcus and 2 other coworkers. They carried balloons, flowers, and a card signed by the entire restaurant staff. "How are you feeling, chef?" Marcus asked, his usual stern expression softened with concern. "Like I got in a fight with a garbage disposal and lost." He almost smiled. "Well, when you're ready to come back, your station will be waiting. Take all the time you need to heal properly. The kitchen's not the same without you." They stayed for 20 minutes sharing restaurant gossip and updates on the dinner service I'd missed. Normal conversation that reminded me there was a world beyond my family's dysfunction. After they left, Maya pulled up one final thread of messages. These were recent, from just last week. "I'm worried about Ada," Paul had written. "She's been distant lately, probably jealous of Grace's upcoming partnership. Can you check if she's planning something to upset her sister? You know how she gets when Grace has good news." I stared at the timestamp. Last week, when I'd been distant, that was because I'd been working 16-hour days to help Marcus launch the new seasonal menu. I'd barely had time to sleep, let alone plot against Grace. "He's been poisoning the well," I whispered. making everyone think I'm some attention-seeking drama queen while Grace is the perpetual victim. Not everyone, Maya corrected. Just the people who don't actually know you. Anyone who's spent real time with you sees the truth. You're the one who shows up, who works harder than anyone, who takes care of everyone else while they walk all over you. I need to sleep, I said, overwhelmed by the magnitude of these revelations. Maya squeezed my good hand. I'll be back tomorrow, and Ada, he doesn't deserve your protection anymore. When people ask where he was during your surgery, tell them the truth. After she left, I lay in the growing darkness prescription painkillers, making everything fuzzy except the sharp edges of betrayal. Every memory felt different now, tainted with new understanding. All those times I'd blamed myself for not being good enough, for failing to earn his pride. The heart monitor beeped steadily, a rhythm that reminded me I was still here despite everything. Dr. Martinez had said another 30 minutes would have been too late. 30 minutes. That's how long my father had stood in that hallway, choosing Grace's manufactured crisis over my actual emergency. I thought about calling him, then realized I didn't want to hear whatever excuse he'd craft. He'd spent years perfecting the art of making me feel guilty for having needs. Well, I was done feeling guilty, done making excuses, done pretending this was normal. My phone buzzed with a text. Unknown number. Hi, Ada. This is Sharon, your head nurse. I wanted to let you know I'll be handling your case personally. I lost my daughter because someone didn't think her emergency was serious enough. That won't happen on my watch. Rest now. Tomorrow we start fighting back. I set the phone aside and closed my eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. Instead, I lay there cataloging every moment I'd dismissed, every achievement he'd diminished, every time Grace's dramatics had trumped my reality. The pain medication finally pulled me under, but not before one last thought crystallized. I'd almost died today, and my father had walked away. Whatever happened next, whatever excuses or manipulations they tried, nothing could erase that truth. Some betrayals cut too deep for healing. Some patterns once seen can never be unseen. And sometimes nearly bleeding out on an operating table is what it takes to finally stop bleeding out emotionally for people who never deserved that sacrifice. Sunlight streamed through the hospital blinds when I woke to voices in the hallway. My father's familiar baritone mixed with Grace's higher pitch, and my whole body tensed. The clock showed 9:17. He'd left me for over 20 hours. They entered like they owned the place, Paul carrying a small bouquet of grocery store carnations, Grace clutching his other arm like she might collapse without support. She wore designer sunglasses despite being indoors, her typical post-crisis affectation. Ada, thank God you're okay. Paul rushed forward, attempting to embrace me. I raised my good hand to stop him. Don't! He faltered, confusion flickering across his features. Sweetheart, I'm so sorry I had to step out yesterday. You know how Grace gets and... This is so traumatic for me, Grace interrupted, sinking into the visitor's chair like a Victorian lady with vapors. Seeing you hooked up to all these machines, knowing I could have lost my only sister. She pressed a manicured hand to her forehead. Paul immediately shifted focus, rubbing her back while murmuring comfort. The carnations lay forgotten on the bedside table. Are you seriously making this about you? The words came out sharper than intended. Grace's head snapped up. Excuse me, I'm expressing concern for my injured sister. You're expressing concern for yourself, as always. Ada. Paul's voice carried that warning tone I'd heard throughout childhood. Your sister drove all the way here despite her own troubles. Show some gratitude. Gratitude. I struggled to sit up straighter, ignoring the pull of stitches. Where were you when they wheeled me into emergency surgery, when Dr. Martinez had to restart my heart because I'd lost so much blood? Restart your... He paled slightly but recovered quickly. You're exaggerating. I spoke with a nurse who said it was routine surgery for lacerations. Which nurse? I don't remember her name. The point is, you're fine now. There's no need for this hostility when Grace and I came to support you. You left me bleeding on an emergency table because Grace didn't get a promotion she probably didn't deserve anyway. How dare you? Grace shot to her feet. I worked 80-hour weeks for that partnership you wouldn't understand because playing with food isn't real pressure like law. Playing with food. Heat flooded my face. I'm a sous chef at one of the city's best restaurants. But sure, let's talk about your law career. How's that going, by the way? Did they give you a reason for passing you over? Something flickered in Grace's eyes, panic, before she deflected. They said I needed more trial experience, which is ridiculous. I've second-chaired dozens of cases. Not what I heard, I pressed. Maya has a friend at your firm. Want to know what she said? That's enough. Paul stepped between us. Ada, you've obviously been given too much pain medication. You're not thinking clearly. I was gone for 20 minutes 30 at most. You're building this into something it's not because you're jealous of your sister's success. The door opened before I could respond. Head nurse Sharon entered, tablet in hand, her expression professionally neutral. She was older, maybe 60, with short gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. Mr. Morrison, I'm Sharon Winters, head of nursing. We need to discuss your daughter's care plan. She glanced at her tablet. Though I'm surprised to see you now. You weren't here for the critical periods. I had to handle a brief family matter, Paul said smoothly. Surely you understand. I'm here now. Brief. Sharon's eyebrow arched slightly. Interesting. Well, I'll need you to update the emergency contact information since you were unreachable during the surgical emergency. That's a misunderstanding. I was always reachable. Really? Sharon touched her tablet screen. Because according to our records, we tried calling you 6 times when Ada's condition deteriorated. All calls went to voicemail. I stared at him. 6 times he'd ignored 6 calls while talking to Grace. My phone must have malfunctioned, he insisted. All 6 times. How unfortunate. Sharon's tone could have frosted windows. Well, perhaps you'd like to see something that might clarify the timeline. She moved to the wall-mounted screen usually used for patient education. Hospital security upgraded our systems last year. We have comprehensive coverage of all areas, including emergency zones. Quality assurance, you understand. My father's confident expression wavered. I don't see why that's relevant. Don't you? Sharon touched her tablet, and suddenly the screen showed security footage from yesterday. Clear as day, there was Paul in the emergency area checking his phone, answering it, then walking toward the exit. The timestamp showed 11:43. He didn't return until the footage jumped to 9:21 this morning. The timestamp must be wrong, he stammered. Our security system synchronizes with the atomic clock. Very precise. Sharon touched the screen again. This is particularly interesting. The audio was muffled but audible. Paul's voice in the hallway. Ada's fine, just needs some stitches. Grace is the one who really needs me. She's the successful one, the one going places. Ada chose restaurant work. She's used to cuts and burns. Silence filled the room like water. Even Grace had stopped her dramatic posturing, staring at the screen. I also have the surgical notes, Sharon continued relentlessly. Would you like to hear what Dr. Martinez wrote? Patient presented with severe hemorrhaging from multiple traumatic lacerations. Blood loss critical. Required 2 units during surgery. Cardiac arrhythmia noted and corrected. Your daughter almost died, Mr. Morrison, while you were comforting your other daughter about a job disappointment. This is a violation of privacy. Grace found her voice. We could sue this hospital for showing us that footage without consent. Actually, Sharon smiled thinly, Ada gave consent for full disclosure of her medical emergency to family members. It's documented. She has nothing to hide. Do you... Paul's face cycled through emotions, anger, embarrassment, calculation. Finally, he settled on righteous indignation. This is harassment. We came here to support Ada, and you're ambushing us with selectively edited footage. Selectively edited. I laughed, but it sounded hollow. Dad, just admit it. You left me. You chose Grace's tantrum over my medical emergency. At least own it. You're being dramatic, he insisted, but the words lacked conviction. I knew you were in good hands. Grace needed immediate support. I needed a parent. The shout ripped from my throat, surprising everyone, including me. I was scared and alone and bleeding, and you walked away like I was an inconvenience, interrupting Grace's spotlight moment. You've always been jealous, Grace interjected, recovering her equilibrium. Always trying to compete with me to make everything a crisis, so Dad would pay attention to you instead of supporting my career. Your career that's going so well you didn't get promoted, I shot back. Tell them why Grace. Tell them about the complaints. What complaints? Paul turned to Grace, who suddenly found the linoleum fascinating. It's nothing. Disgruntled junior associates who can't handle strong leadership. 3 formal complaints about verbal abuse. I continued Maya's intel, finally useful. 2 complaints about taking credit for others' work. 1 pending investigation for... Shut up! Grace screamed, her composure finally cracking. You don't know anything about my life, about the pressure I'm under. Everything I do is for this family, to make Dad proud, to honor Mom's memory. Don't! My voice dropped dangerously low. Don't you dare invoke Mom. She would be horrified by what you've become. What you've both become. Paul stepped toward me, his expression shifting to concern. Ada, please. We're family. Whatever happened yesterday, we can work through it. But this attacking Grace when she's vulnerable... When she's vulnerable? I looked at Sharon. Can you please explain my current medical condition, since my family seems confused about who's actually vulnerable here? Sharon consulted her tablet with professional precision. Patient sustained deep lacerations requiring 73 total stitches across multiple sites, severe blood loss necessitating transfusion, tendon repair in right arm with anticipated 6-month recovery minimum, nerve damage that may result in permanent sensation loss. Current pain management includes... Okay, we get it, Paul interrupted. Ada was hurt, but she's going to be fine. Grace's career might never recover from this setback. Are you actually serious right now? I stared at him, finally seeing him clearly. I almost died. Do you understand that my heart stopped? They had to shock me back. And you're still worried about Grace's job. You didn't almost die, he said firmly, as if stating it would make it true. You had a workplace accident. Unfortunate, yes, but you're being melodramatic about the severity. Sharon's expression hardened further. Mr. Morrison, I've been a nurse for 35 years. I lost my own daughter because her father thought she was being melodramatic about chest pains. Turned out to be a pulmonary embolism. By the time he took her seriously, it was too late. Her voice remained steady, but her eyes blazed. Your daughter coded on that table. If Dr. Martinez hadn't been right there, if we'd waited even 5 more minutes, you'd be planning a funeral instead of making excuses. The color drained from Paul's face, but Grace rallied. This is emotional manipulation. You can't guilt trip us because Ada had an accident. Accidents happen in restaurants all the time. Not like this, a new voice said from the doorway. Executive Chef Marcus stood there, still in his whites, holding a folder. His expression was grim. What are you doing here? I asked, surprised. Insurance company asked me to review the security footage from the kitchen. Found something interesting. He looked directly at Grace. Funny thing about accidents, they usually don't involve your ex-boyfriend deliberately creating hazards. The room temperature seemed to drop 20 degrees. Grace's mouth opened and closed like a landed fish. "What?" Paul's voice cracked. Marcus pulled papers from his folder. "Tyler Brennan, hired 2 weeks ago. Solid references, seemed eager to work. What he didn't mention on his application was that he dated Grace Morrison for 3 months last year." That's coincidence," Grace stuttered. "Is it because security footage shows you visiting him yesterday morning, 20 minutes before Ada's accident?" My mind reeled. Tyler's nervous behavior, his constant phone checking the way he'd knocked over that oil. "You didn't," I whispered. "Grace, tell me you didn't." "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, but her hands shook as she grabbed her purse. "This is insane. I'm leaving." "I wouldn't," Sharon said mildly. "Hospital security already called the police. They're on their way up." Paul looked between his daughter's confusion and horror warring on his face. "Grace, what is he talking about?" "It's not what it sounds like." Grace's carefully constructed facade crumbled entirely. I just wanted to rattle her a little. She refused to loan me money last month, acting all high and mighty about her savings, while I'm drowning in student loans. Tyler was supposed to make her look bad, maybe get her demoted. Not this. "You tried to sabotage my career because I wouldn't give you money." My voice sounded distant, like someone else was speaking. "You orchestrated an attack that nearly killed me over money. I didn't know he'd go that far. He was just supposed to mess up some orders, make you look incompetent." "Well, congratulations," I said quietly. "You succeeded beyond your wildest dreams. I'm incompetent now. Can't work for months. Might never regain full use of my hand. Hope it was worth it." Paul sank into the empty chair, looking every one of his 58 years. "Grace, what have you done?" For the first time in my life, I saw Grace without anyone rushing to comfort her. She stood alone in the middle of the room, designer clothes and perfect makeup unable to hide the ugly truth underneath. The story was about to get much worse before it got better, but in that moment I felt something I hadn't expected: relief. The masks were finally off. The truth was finally out. And I was finally free to stop pretending this family was anything other than broken. 2 police officers arrived within minutes, their presence transforming the hospital room into something out of a crime drama. The older one, Detective Patricia Hawkins, had kind eyes that missed nothing. Her younger partner, Officer David Chen, took notes while she asked questions. "Miss Morrison, I need you to understand your rights," Detective Hawkins began, but Grace was already spiraling. "This is a misunderstanding. I never told Tyler to hurt anyone." She clutched her designer bag like a life preserver. "We just talked about old times. At his workplace, 20 minutes before your sister's accident." The detective's tone remained neutral, but her implication was clear. Marcus stepped forward. "I have the kitchen footage on this drive plus Tyler's confession. He broke down about an hour ago when he realized the extent of Ada's injuries." "He's lying." Grace's voice pitched higher. "Whatever he said, he's lying to save himself." "From what?" I asked quietly. If it was just an accident, what would he need to save himself from? She spun toward me, and for a second I saw something vicious in her eyes. "You always have to be the victim, don't you, poor Ada, working her little restaurant job while I'm out there in the real world?" "Grace, stop talking." Paul finally interjected, some paternal instinct kicking in. "You need a lawyer." "I am a lawyer," she shrieked. "Or I was until you ruined everything," she pointed at me. "If you'd just given me the money, none of this would have happened." Detective Hawkins exchanged glances with her partner. "Miss Morrison, are you admitting to orchestrating the incident?" "No, I'm just saying." Grace caught herself, legal training finally overriding panic. "I want to speak to an attorney." "That's your right," the detective agreed. "But I'll need you to come with us for formal questioning." "You're arresting me." Grace's voice cracked. Dad do something." Paul stood slowly looking between his daughters like he was seeing us for the first time. "What was Tyler supposed to do, Grace? What exactly did you ask him for?" "It doesn't matter now. It matters to me." His voice boomed, startling everyone. "Your sister is lying in a hospital bed because of something you did. So yes, it matters." "I've given her everything," Grace exploded. "My whole life, everything was about not outshining poor, sensitive Ada. Don't get too many A's. Grace, it makes Ada feel bad. Don't talk about law school too much. Grace, Ada's struggling at culinary school. Share your birthday party, Grace. Ada doesn't have as many friends. I'm sick of it." Each word hit like a physical blow, but not for the reasons she thought. I was hearing our childhood through her warped lens, where my existence was somehow an attack on hers. "You got everything," I said quietly. "Dad missed my graduation for your breakup. My competition wins were credited to your help. Every achievement I had was minimized to protect your ego. What more could you possibly want?" "Your absence," she spat. "Do you know how much easier my life would be without competing with Saint Ada, the martyred chef?" The room went silent. Even the detective looked shocked. Paul made a sound like he'd been punched. "Grace, you don't mean that." "Don't I? You have no idea what it's like being the older sister who's supposed to be perfect, while little Ada gets to pursue her dreams and have everyone applaud her for being brave and following her passion. Well, I followed the traditional path. I did what was expected. Where's my praise?" "In prison, apparently," Sharon muttered, earning a sharp look from the detective. Officer Chen's radio crackled. He stepped aside to answer, then returned with a grim expression. "Detective, the suspect wants to make a full statement. Says Miss Morrison here promised him $10,000 to, quote, make sure Ada can't work for a while." "That's a lie." But Grace's protest sounded hollow even to her. "We have the Venmo records," Chen continued. $5,000 transferred last week with the memo consultation fee, matching amount promised upon completion." I felt the blood drain from my face. "You paid him $5,000 to hurt me. Where did you even get that kind of money?" "From the settlement Mom left us," Paul whispered, understanding dawning. "The money you said went to student loans." Grace's silence was damning. "Helen left money." I looked at Paul confused. "What settlement?" Now it was Paul's turn to look uncomfortable. "Your mother had a life insurance policy. It paid out $50,000 to each of you when you turned 25. Grace got hers 3 years ago. Yours is in trust until my 30th birthday," I finished, "which is in 18 months. You never told me about this. I was going to, when after Grace spent hers trying to have me killed." "Stop being so dramatic." Grace snapped, then seemed to realize what she'd said. The same words Paul had used when abandoning me. Detective Hawkins cleared her throat. "Miss Morrison, we need to go. You can call your attorney from the station." As they prepared to leave, Grace grabbed Paul's arm. "Daddy, please. You can't let them do this. It was just supposed to scare her." "Supposed to scare me." I found strength in anger. "Tyler knocked over boiling oil and made sure I'd fall into broken equipment. That's not a scare tactic, Grace. That's attempted murder." "It's not I specifically said not to." She stopped, realizing she'd just admitted to giving instructions. "Grace Morrison, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit assault." Detective Hawkins began the Miranda warning as Officer Chen produced handcuffs. "This is Ada's fault." Grace struggled against the cuffs. "She's poisoned you all against me just like she poisoned Mom." "What?" Paul and I said in unison. Grace's face went white, realizing what she'd revealed. "What did you just say about Mom?" My voice came out deadly quiet. "Nothing. I misspoke." "No." Paul stepped closer to Grace. "What did you mean poisoned Helen died of cancer?" Grace's mouth opened and closed, but no words came. Detective Hawkins paused, sensing this was bigger than assault charges. "Grace." Paul's voice carried an edge I'd never heard. "What did you do?" "I didn't do anything, but Ada was always Mom's favorite, always getting special treatment. Mom was going to change her will, leave Ada more, because she was following her dreams, while I was already successful. It wasn't fair." My mind raced. Mom tried to change her will before she died. Her lawyer said she never finalized it. "Because she got too sick too fast," Paul said slowly. The cancer spread so aggressively after seeming stable for months. "You can't prove anything," Grace said quickly. Too quickly. "Prove what?" Detective Hawkins asked carefully. "Nothing. There's nothing to prove because I didn't do anything." But Paul was already pulling out his phone, scrolling through old messages. "The week before Helen's condition worsened, you volunteered to manage her medications. Said you wanted to help since I was overwhelmed with work. So I was being a good daughter. You were pre-law then. You'd have known about inheritance laws, how changes need to be properly witnessed and filed." His hands shook. "Grace, did you interfere with your mother's cancer treatment?" "You're insane. All of you, I want my lawyer now." Sharon stepped forward. "Mr. Morris in the hospital would still have your wife's medical records. If there's suspicion of tampering—" "There's no evidence," Grace thrashed against the restraints. "She was dying anyway. The cancer was terminal." "But she had months," I whispered, memories flooding back. "The doctors said she had 6 months to a year. She died in 3 weeks. Sometimes cancer progresses unexpectedly," Grace said, but her voice wavered. "You switched her medications." Paul's voice was hollow. "Or withheld them. That's why you insisted on organizing her pills yourself. Said you wanted to be useful." "You can't prove that." "Maybe not," Detective Hawkins interjected. "But we can certainly investigate. Murder has no statute of limitations." The word murder broke something in Grace. She sagged in the officer's grip, tears finally flowing. But even now they seemed more for herself than anyone else. "I just wanted things to be fair," she whimpered. "Why should Ada get more? I'm the one who worked harder, achieved more. I deserved—" "To kill our mother?" I couldn't process this. "You killed Mom because of money." "I didn't kill her. The cancer didn't extend her suffering. That's all. It was merciful." "Merciful!" Paul's voice broke entirely. Helen spent her last days in agony begging to see her daughters one more time. We thought the pain was from the cancer, but it was withdrawal from her pain medications, wasn't it? You let her suffer to protect an inheritance that wasn't even that significant. "It was significant to me. Do you know what student loans cost? What living in this city costs when you're not playing house in a restaurant kitchen?" "Get her out," I said quietly. "Please just get her out." Detective Hawkins nodded to her partner. As they led Grace away, she kept shouting about fairness, about favoritism, about how we'd all regret this. Her voice echoed down the hospital corridor until the elevator doors finally cut it off. Paul collapsed in the chair, aging 20 years in 20 seconds. How did I not see it? How did I raise someone capable of— "You didn't raise her alone," I reminded him. "Mom saw something. That's why she wanted to change the will. She knew what Grace was becoming. And I enabled it, protected her, made excuses." He looked at me with haunted eyes. "I left you bleeding and alone because I believed her manipulations. Even after Helen died, I couldn't see. You saw what she wanted you to see. She's been playing this game our whole lives." Sharon, who'd witnessed this entire nightmare, quietly checked my monitors. "Your blood pressure's elevated. You need rest." "How am I supposed to rest after that?" "I'll get Dr. Martinez. We might need to adjust your medications." She paused at the door. "I'm sorry this happened to you. All of it. No one deserves a family like this." After she left, Paul and I sat in silence. The father I'd wanted my whole life was finally seeing the truth, but it had cost us everything: my mother's life, my sister's freedom, my own blood and safety. "The trust," he said finally. "Helen set it up through her family lawyer. I wasn't supposed to tell you until closer to your birthday, but given everything, it's substantial, Ada. She liquidated assets I didn't even know about. Said she wanted you protected. Protected from Grace. From all of us, I think." His voice broke. "She knew I'd always choose Grace, just like I did yesterday. God, Ada, I'm so sorry." I wanted to comfort him, to fall back into our pattern of me making everything okay, but I was tired. Bone-deep, soul-weary tired of being the understanding one. "I need you to leave," I said quietly. "I can't do this right now." He stood slowly, looking older than his years. "I understand. But Ada, please, we'll need to deal with Grace's situation. The lawyers, the media, if this gets out. We're still family." "No," I said firmly. "We're not. Family doesn't try to kill each other. Family doesn't abandon each other. Family doesn't spend decades tearing each other down. We're just people who share DNA and trauma." He flinched but didn't argue. "I'll handle Grace's lawyer, and I'll make sure your medical bills are covered. It's the least you can do is leave me alone to heal, please." He walked to the door, paused, then left without looking back. I was finally truly alone. But somehow that felt safer than being surrounded by family who'd literally tried to kill me. The monitors beeped steadily, a mechanical heartbeat that reminded me I'd survived. Despite Grace, despite Tyler, despite my father's neglect, I was still here. And maybe that was enough for now. The next morning brought a parade of investigators, lawyers, and revelations that transformed my hospital room into a crime scene. Detective Hawkins returned with a forensics team who photographed my injuries from every angle. The insurance investigator, a sharp-eyed woman named Diane Walsh, brought enhanced security footage that made everyone in the room gasp. "This angle shows the full sequence," Diane narrated as we watched the kitchen footage. "Tyler Brennan checks his phone at 10:42. We've confirmed this was a text from Grace Morrison saying, 'Now.' He then deliberately overfills the oil container, loosens the wheel on the equipment cart, and positions it precisely in Ada's path." "He calculated all of that?" Marcus asked, his face grave. "The text messages between him and Grace are explicit. She sent him Ada's routine, her walking patterns, even which station she'd approach first." Diane pulled up printed messages. Grace wrote, "Make it look accidental, but make sure she can't work for at least 3 months. I need her out of commission." I stared at the premeditation evidence. My own sister had stalked my workplace habits to orchestrate my injury. "It gets worse," Detective Hawkins interjected. "Tyler Brennan gave us everything in exchange for a plea deal, including this." She handed me a printed email. Grace had sent Tyler a list: acceptable injuries, broken wrist, non-dominant, okay leg injury, severe burns to arms, not acceptable head trauma, anything fatal. Need her alive but unable to work. "Like ordering off a menu," Sharon said with disgust. She'd stayed past her shift again, personally overseeing my care. Tyler also revealed that Grace promised an additional $20,000 if Ada's injury ended her career permanently. The detective continued. "She apparently has been siphoning money from their father's accounts for years, using her power of attorney privileges." "What?" I looked up sharply. "Dad gave her power of attorney after your mother died. Grace convinced him he needed help managing finances during his grief. Hawkins showed us bank records. She's taken approximately $80,000 over 5 years, small amounts but consistent." My phone rang Maya. I answered on speaker since everyone here was involved anyway. "Ada, you need to see the news. Grace's law firm just released a statement. They're distancing themselves completely. Turns out those complaints I told you about, they've reopened the investigation. 3 more associates came forward overnight. Came forward with what? Grace has been running a whole side scheme, taking bribes to tank cases selling privileged information. One associate has recordings of her discussing how to throw a class action suit for a pharmaceutical company. The room fell silent. Even hardened Detective Hawkins looked stunned. She's been living a double life, Maya continued. The firm's forensic accountants found offshore accounts. Girl was planning to disappear eventually, but she needed more money first. Guess that's why she targeted you, desperate for funds to complete her exit strategy. Marcus's phone buzzed. He answered, his expression darkening as he listened. The restaurant's insurance company wants to press full charges. Attempted murder, conspiracy, fraud, they're going for everything. Tyler just admitted Grace promised him a job at her firm once she made partner. The whole thing was planned for months. Months. I struggled to process this. She's been planning to hurt me for months. According to Tyler, it started when you refused to co-sign a loan for her last year, Detective Hawkins explained. She became obsessed with the idea that you were hoarding money while she struggled. The irony being she had stolen thousands from your father. A knock interrupted us. Dr. Martinez entered with another doctor, their expressions serious. Ada, this is Dr. Jennifer Yates, our psychiatric consultant. Given everything that's emerged about your family situation, we think it would be helpful for you to speak with someone. I'm not the one who needs a psychiatrist, I said, though even I could hear the shakiness in my voice. Trauma manifests in many ways, Dr. Yates said gently. Learning your sister tried to have you killed, that she may have hastened your mother's death, that your father enabled years of abuse, these are significant psychological injuries beyond your physical ones. We also need to discuss your recovery plan, Dr. Martinez added. The nerve damage is more extensive than initially assessed. You're looking at 8 months minimum of intensive therapy, possibly multiple surgeries. Your career as a chef will be impacted, I finished. I know. Believe me, I know. Your dominant hand may never regain full sensation or fine motor control. We need to be realistic about expectations. The weight of it all crashed down. My sister had literally tried to destroy my life, had possibly killed our mother, had stolen from our father, and she'd succeeded in taking away the one thing I loved most, my ability to cook. Paul arrived then, looking haggard. He'd clearly not slept his usual polished appearance, replaced by wrinkled clothes and stubble. I've been at the police station, he said without preamble. Grace is being held without bail. The judge considered her a flight risk given the offshore accounts. He looked at the assembled officials. How bad is it? Attempted murder, fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy, Detective Hawkins listed. And we're opening an investigation into your wife's death. We've already subpoenaed the medical records. Paul swayed on his feet. Marcus pushed a chair under him before he could fall. I found something at home, Paul said quietly, pulling out a small leather journal. Helen's diary from her last month. I couldn't bear to read it before, but... He handed it to me with shaking hands. I opened it carefully, recognizing my mother's handwriting immediately. The entries were short, pain-filled, but clear. Grace manages my medications now, so helpful, she says, but I feel worse every day. Tried to call my lawyer. Grace said I was too confused, took my phone. Why am I so confused? Something's wrong. The pain is different. Need to tell Paul about the will changes. Protect Ada. Grace says I'm imagining things. Maybe she's right. So tired. The final entry was barely legible. Ada, if you read this, check the music box. Truth there. Love you, my brave girl. What music box? I asked Paul through tears. The one on her dresser. She loved that thing. His voice cracked. I kept it exactly as she left it. Detective Hawkins carefully bagged the diary. We'll need to examine the music box immediately. This could be crucial evidence. I'll go now, Paul said, starting to rise. You'll go with an officer, Hawkins corrected. This is a potential crime scene. As they prepared to leave, my phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. Miss Morrison, this is Catherine Chen from Seattle. I'm your mother's sister. I nearly dropped the phone. Aunt Catherine, but Dad said you and Mom hadn't spoken in years. That's what he was told. Helen and I emailed regularly until about 2 years before she died. Then Grace started intercepting our communications, posing as Helen to say terrible things. I only learned the truth when I saw the news about Grace's arrest. Ada, there are things you need to know about your mother's family, about the inheritance Grace was so desperate to control. What kind of things? Your maternal grandfather left a significant estate in trust. Helen was the sole beneficiary, but she wanted it divided equally between you girls. When she got sick, she tried to ensure you'd be protected, knowing Grace's nature. The main trust, it's worth approximately $2 million. $2 million? Grace had tried to kill me over money I didn't even know existed. Where does it stand now? I managed to ask. Frozen pending investigation. But if Grace is convicted of attempting to harm you or, God forbid, harming Helen, she forfeits all claims. It would all go to you. I looked around the room at the investigators, medical staff, my father's hunched figure. I don't want blood money. It's not blood money. It's your birthright that your mother wanted you to have. She knew you'd use it wisely, maybe open your own restaurant someday. That was her dream for you. After we hung up, the room remained quiet. Finally, Sharon spoke. That woman destroyed everything for money she was never going to get anyway. Greed makes people stupid, Detective Hawkins observed. We see it all the time, though rarely to this extent. Dr. Yates stepped forward. Ada, we need to discuss psychological support going forward. This level of betrayal, particularly from family. I know, I interrupted. I need help. I need to figure out how to exist in a world where my sister wanted me dead, and my father let it happen through neglect. I didn't let Paul started. You left me bleeding on an emergency table, I said firmly. You've left me bleeding emotionally my whole life. Every time you chose Grace's dramatics over my reality, you left me bleeding. The only difference this time was the blood was visible. He had no response to that. How could he? Marcus cleared his throat. Ada, I want you to know your job is secure. When you're ready, even if it takes a year, even if you can only advise rather than cook, you have a place in my kitchen. I might never cook professionally again. Then you'll teach, or develop recipes, or become the best expediter in the business with one hand. Talent like yours doesn't disappear because of physical limitations. It adapts. I wanted to believe him, but looking at my bandaged hand, knowing what Grace had stolen from me, adaptation felt impossible. The rest of the day blurred together. More statements, more evidence, more revelations. Grace had apparently bragged to Tyler about solving the Ada problem once and for all. She'd researched injury statistics, calculated exactly how much damage would end my career without raising murder charges. She'd even taken out a life insurance policy on me 6 months ago, forging my signature. Each new detail felt like another wound until I was emotionally bleeding out, just as I'd physically bled on that kitchen floor. My sister hadn't just wanted me gone, she'd wanted to profit from my destruction. By evening, when everyone finally left except Sharon, I was empty, hollowed out like a gutted fish, all the vital parts removed. I've seen a lot in my years here, Sharon said quietly, checking my IV. But this is something else. I keep thinking I'll wake up, that this is just trauma-induced hallucinations. It's real, and it's horrific, but you survived it. That matters. Does it? I've lost my family, possibly my career, my ability to trust anyone ever again. What exactly did I survive for? Sharon sat on my bed's edge, breaking protocol. You survived because you're stronger than they ever gave you credit for. You survived to tell this story, to build something better from the ashes they left. Don't let her steal that too. I wanted to argue, but I was too tired. Tomorrow would bring more revelations, more pain, more evidence of how deep the rot in my family went. But tonight I just needed to rest, to heal, to figure out how to survive the surviving. 3 months, 97 days of physical therapy counseling sessions, and learning to exist in a world where my sister was serving a 15-year sentence for attempted murder. The conspiracy charges, fraud, and investigation into Mom's death would extend that, but for now, 15 years felt both too long and not nearly enough. "Squeeze the stress ball," commanded Brenda, my physical therapist, who looked like she could bench press a car but had the gentlest hands. "I know it hurts, but those tendons need to remember their job." I squeezed, feeling fire shoot up my arm. My right hand, once able to julienne vegetables with precision, now struggled to hold a tennis ball, but it was progress from 2 months ago when I couldn't hold anything at all. "Better," Brenda noted. "Your grip strength improved 12% this week. That's significant." "Still can't hold a knife properly. Yet. Can't hold a knife yet." She guided my hand through exercises. "You know what your problem is. You're comparing yourself to who you were before. Compare yourself to who you were last week instead." Good advice I'd heard variations of from Dr. Yates, from Maya, from everyone except the one person whose opinion I'd stopped caring about. Paul sent letters, one every week addressed in his careful handwriting. I'd opened the first few full of apologies, justifications, and updates about Grace I didn't want. Now they went straight to a box in my closet. Maybe someday I'd read them. Maybe I'd burn them. For now they were Schrodinger's correspondence, both meaningful and meaningless until observed. My phone buzzed. Marcus checking in as he did daily. "Restaurant's slow without you. New sous chef doesn't understand the Saturday night rhythm. You available to consult this weekend, just expediting calling out orders. We'll modify the setup for your limitations." I stared at the message. He'd been asking for weeks, patiently waiting for me to be ready. The problem was, I didn't know if I'd ever be ready to step back into a professional kitchen knowing I couldn't perform at my previous level. "What's got you frowning?" Dr. Yates asked from the doorway. We'd moved our sessions to right after PT when my defenses were lowest. I showed her the text. "He wants me back in the kitchen." "And you're afraid?" Terrified. What if I can't do it? What if seeing everyone work while I just watch is too much? What if it's exactly what you need? She settled into her usual chair. "You've been in limbo for 3 months, Ada. At some point you need to test what's possible." My hand is improving. But more importantly, your identity isn't just in your hands. It's in your knowledge, your palate, your ability to orchestrate a kitchen. Those didn't get damaged. "My sister tried to take everything from me." Tried, failed. You're still here, still a chef, still you. She leaned forward. "What would your mother say?" I laughed bitterly. According to her diary, probably check the music box. We'd found it, of course. Inside beneath the dancing ballerina was a USB drive containing videos Mom had recorded during her last months. Messages for me and Grace, though Grace's had been different. In mine, Mom told me she was proud that she knew I'd succeed despite the family dynamics. In Grace's, she'd begged her to get help to stop the jealousy before it destroyed her. She'd known. Even then, she'd known what Grace was capable of. My phone rang, interrupting the session. Unknown number with a Seattle area code. "Ada. It's Aunt Catherine. I'm in town. I know this is unexpected, but I'd love to meet you. There are things about your mother you should know." An hour later, I sat in the hospital cafeteria across from a woman who looked startlingly like Mom. Same wild curls, Same warm brown eyes, same way of tilting her head when listening. "You look good," she said. "Considering everything? I look like someone who got filleted and stitched back together." "You look like a survivor." She pulled out a photo album. "These are from before the falling out. Helen and I were inseparable growing up." The pictures showed 2 young women laughing, cooking together, living. Mom looked so young, so carefree. Before Paul, before Grace's damage, before everything went wrong. "She called me the night she decided to change her will," Catherine said quietly. She knew Grace was dangerous, had known for years, but kept hoping she'd outgrow it. The manipulation, the lies, the casual cruelty disguised as ambition. Why didn't she do something sooner? Because she was dying. Because she wanted to believe her daughter could change. Because Paul enabled Grace so thoroughly that Helen felt powerless. Catherine reached across the table, carefully taking my injured hand. "But she did try to protect you. The trust, the videos, even asking me to watch from afar. She knew this day might come. The day Grace tried to kill me, the day you'd need family who actually functioned like family." She squeezed gently. "I'm here now, if you want me to be." I studied this aunt I'd been denied, seeing Mom's kindness in her eyes. "I don't know how to trust anyone anymore." "Then don't. Not yet. Let me earn it." She smiled sadly. "I've got 28 years of birthdays to make up for. Might take a while." That evening, I finally responded to Marcus. "Saturday, 2 hours max. I'll need accommodations." "Whatever you need. Welcome back, chef." The word chef sent complicated emotions through me. Was I still a chef if I couldn't properly hold a knife? If my right hand trembled during delicate work? If I'd never again have the precision that defined my career? Saturday arrived too quickly. I stood outside Morton's service entrance for 10 minutes, heart pounding. Maya found me there, having arrived early for moral support. "You've got this," she said firmly. "And if you don't, we leave. Simple as that." "Nothing about this is simple." "No, but you're doing it anyway. That's what courage looks like." The kitchen was exactly as I remembered, gleaming steel, organized chaos, the ballet of professional cooking. But now I noticed things I'd overlooked before, the sharp edges that had torn me open, the oil that could destroy careers, the dangerous dance we performed nightly. "Chef on deck." Marcus's voice boomed and the kitchen stilled. Everyone turned. Some smiled, others looked uncertain. I saw my replacement, a competent-looking woman who clearly knew her stuff, but looked relieved to see me. "Just expediting tonight," I said, my voice steadier than expected. "Let's make it a good service." The first hour was hell. My hand cramped holding the tickets. I fumbled orders, mixed up table numbers, felt every eye tracking my mistakes. But then muscle memory kicked in, not in my damaged hand, but in my mind. I found the rhythm, the flow, the dance of orders in and out. Behind hot, called James, one of our line cooks. "Heard table 6 up in 2, where's my garnish?" "Coming, chef?" "Chef." They still called me chef. By the end of service, I was exhausted but exhilarated. We'd served 200 covers without major incident. My hand ached, my whole body thrummed with fatigue, but I'd done it. "Drink?" Marcus asked after close. "Can't. Pain meds." "Juice then. We need to talk." We sat in the empty dining room, surrounded by evidence of successful service. "You did good tonight." I was slow, sloppy, had to ask for help reading my own handwriting. "You were there. That matters." He leaned forward. "I want to propose something. Come back part-time. Not cooking, not yet. But developing menus, training staff, expediting when you're able. Build back slowly." "What if I can never cook again, Neely cook?" "Then you'll be the best non-cooking chef in the city. Ada, your value isn't just in your hands. It's in your brain, your palate, your ability to see what others miss. Don't let Grace take that too. That night I called Catherine. Tell me about the trust, not the money the restaurant mom mentioned. She always dreamed of you having your own place, somewhere that celebrated food as love, not competition. She even picked out potential locations before she got sick. Show me. Over the next month as I continued therapy and part-time work, Catherine and I explored Mom's dream. The trust money sat untouched. I wasn't ready for that weight. But planning helped. Dreaming helped. Having an aunt who showed up helped. Grace wrote once from prison, a rambling letter about unfairness, about how I'd ruined her life, about how she was the real victim. I gave it to Dr. Yates, who added it to the file building for Mom's case. The investigation had found evidence of medication tampering, though proving murder this many years later was challenging. It didn't matter. Grace was already gone for long enough that I could build a new life without her shadow. Paul continued writing. I continued not reading. Maybe that would change. Maybe it wouldn't. For now, boundaries were more important than forgiveness. Your hand's at 40% functionality, Brenda announced after my latest evaluation. That's remarkable given the initial damage. 40% of my former ability. 40% better than paralysis. 40% more than Grace wanted to leave you with. She guided me through new exercises. Stop comparing to before. Start building toward what's next. What's next? The phrase that had terrified me now felt like possibility. That evening, I stood in my apartment kitchen, the one place I could still cook without professional pressure. My knife skills were clumsy, my grip uncertain, but I could still taste, still season, still create. I made a simple pasta the kind Mom used to make when we were sick. Nothing fancy, nothing that required precision. Just comfort in a bowl. As I ate, I thought about Grace in a cell, Paul in his empty house, Mom in the ground, and me in this small kitchen still standing. Still cooking even badly. Still here. The music box sat on my counter, its dancing ballerina forever frozen mid-spin. Inside the USB drive held Mom's voice, her dreams, her hopes for me. I'd watched those videos dozens of times, finding new meaning each viewing. My brave girl, she'd said in one. Whatever happens, remember that courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about being terrified and doing it anyway. I was terrified of failing, of succeeding, of trusting, of being alone, of not being alone. But I was doing it anyway. One burnt sauce, one cramped hand, one day at a time. Grace had tried to take everything. She'd almost succeeded. But almost only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades, as Mom used to say. In real life, almost means you failed. And she had failed. I was still here, still fighting, still cooking. That had to count for something. 1 year. 365 days since Tyler knocked over that oil and changed everything. I stood in the empty restaurant space, sunlight streaming through windows that would soon bear the name Helen's Table. The contractor says 3 months for renovations, Catherine said, checking her notes. 4 if we add the accessibility features you want. Add them. I flexed my right hand now at 60% functionality. Good enough for some tasks, never again for others. Every chef with limitations should have a place to work. The space was perfect, a corner location in a neighborhood Mom had loved, with a small garden patio where I'd grow herbs. The trust money had made it possible, but the real gift was discovering I could still create just differently. You sure about the menu concept? Maya asked, reviewing my plans. A rotating selection based on stories of resilience. Each dish tells a story. The server explains it. Diners don't just eat, they connect. I traced the layout with my left hand, which had become surprisingly skilled. Mom always said food without story is just calories. My phone buzzed. Marcus, final service tonight. You coming? I was leaving Morton's officially ready for my own venture. Tonight would be goodbye to the kitchen where I'd bled literally and figuratively. Ada! A voice from the doorway made me freeze. Paul stood there looking older, smaller, holding an envelope. I know you don't want to see me, but this came for you at the house, from Grace's lawyer. I took it without touching him. Inside legal documents outlining Grace's updated situation. The investigation into Mom's death had yielded enough evidence for additional charges. Her 15 years had become 25 to life. They found the medications she withheld, Paul said quietly. Hidden in her old room. She kept them like trophies. I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no grief, just hollow acknowledgement. Thanks for bringing this. Ada, please. 5 minutes. That's all I ask. Catherine and Maya looked ready to intervene, but I waved them off. 5 minutes. We stepped onto the future patio. Paul looked around, seeing what I was building without him. Your mother would be proud. Don't! Right. I'm sorry. He pulled out a worn envelope. I've been carrying this for months. My therapist? Yes, I'm in therapy, said I should give it to you regardless of whether we reconcile. Inside was a photograph I'd never seen. Mom in a hospital bed holding newborn me, her face radiant despite exhaustion. On the back in her handwriting, Ada's first day, already brave, already perfect, already teaching me that love multiplies, never divides. She gave that to me when you were born, Paul said. Told me to remember it whenever I forgot that both daughters deserved equal love. I failed her, failed you. Yes, you did. I can't undo it. Can't bring Helen back or take back the times I chose Grace's drama over your reality. But I wanted you to have this. To know that once before I lost my way, I saw you. Really saw you. He turned to leave, stopped. I put the house up for sale. Can't live there anymore knowing what happened. Half the proceeds will go to a fund for culinary students from difficult families. The other half to the food bank Helen volunteered at. It's not enough, but it's something I finished. He nodded, understanding this was goodbye, not forgiveness. Some wounds heal, others just scar over. We'd always be the latter. That evening, Morton's kitchen buzzed with my farewell party. The staff had prepared a meal showcasing techniques I'd taught them. Watching them work with confidence I'd helped build filled the hollow spaces grief had carved. Speech, someone called out. I stood on a prep box, my scarred hand visible to all. A year ago I almost died in this kitchen. Not from the usual burns or cuts we all joke about, but from betrayal. Family who should have protected me tried to destroy me. The room was silent, everyone knowing the story, but never having heard me address it directly. But you all saved me. Not just Marcus calling the ambulance or Janet applying pressure to keep me alive. Every one of you who visited, who sent messages, who kept my station ready even when we didn't know if I'd return. You taught me that family isn't blood. Family is who shows up. To Chef Ada. Marcus raised his glass. Who showed us that strength isn't about perfect knife skills. It's about getting back up. Getting back up? Later, as the party wound down, Sharon appeared. She rarely left the hospital, but had made an exception. Heard you were opening a place. Want to be my first customer? I want to be your regular customer. The one who tells everyone about this amazing chef who survived the unsurvivable. I'm not amazing. I can barely brunoise vegetables anymore. You're redefining what a chef can be. That's pretty amazing to me. The next weeks blurred with construction permits and menu development. I hired 2 line cooks with their own limitations, one with severe burns limiting mobility, another with partial paralysis from a car accident. Together, we designed a kitchen that worked for bodies that didn't fit the traditional mold. This is revolutionary, said James Chen, the food critic who'd come for a preview. You're not just accommodating disabilities, you're showing they don't diminish talent. Everyone assumes chefs need perfect bodies. I explained, demonstrating how our modified stations worked. But the best food comes from understanding creativity and love. None of those require two fully functional hands. Opening night arrived faster than expected. I stood in my adapted kitchen watching my team prep. My right hand would never again have the speed or precision of before, but my left had learned new tricks. More importantly, I'd learned that excellence could take many forms. "First order's coming in," Maya called from the host station. The printer chattered with tickets. I read them out, my voice steady. 2 heritage soups, 1 survivor's salmon, 3 Phoenix pastas. Each dish had a story card explaining its inspiration. The heritage soup honored immigrants who'd preserved family recipes through upheaval. The survivor's salmon celebrated a fellow chef who'd returned to work after cancer. The Phoenix pasta, my signature, represented rebirth from ashes. Behind hot called Jamie, one of my adapted kitchen hires, maneuvering her wheelchair with practiced ease. "Heard keep those plates coming." The night flew by in controlled chaos. We served 80 covers, not huge, but perfect for our opening. Every plate that left the pass carried not just food, but narrative, connection, purpose. "Last ticket," Maya announced near midnight. I looked at the slip and froze. "Table 12, Paul Morrison, party of 1. Through the kitchen window, I saw him sitting alone, reading the story cards with tears streaming down his face. He'd ordered the Phoenix pasta. "Send it out," I told my team. No special treatment, no acknowledgement. Just food and its story. Later, as we cleaned and celebrated, I found his payment slip. He'd left a $1,000 tip and a note for the Culinary Student Fund. "May they all be as brave as my daughter." I pocketed the note but donated the tip. Some gestures came too late to matter personally, but could still matter to others. "So," Catherine asked, appearing with champagne, "how does it feel?" "Like beginning again. Like Mom's here somehow." She is. In every dish, every story, every person you'll feed and inspire. We toasted as my team finished closing duties. Through the window, I caught my reflection scarred, but standing damaged, but not defeated. Grace had tried to erase me. Instead, she'd revealed me. "Final numbers," Maya asked Ever, the business manager. "Full reservation book for the next 2 weeks, 3 interview requests, 1 cookbook inquiry. And I'm exhausted but happy, actually happy. It had taken a year of physical therapy counseling and rebuilding to reach this point. My hand would never fully recover. My family was fractured beyond repair. My mother was gone. My sister imprisoned my father, a stranger. But I had this, a restaurant born from pain but serving joy. A team that understood limitations could become innovations. A story that proved survival was its own form of success. As we locked up, I touched the sign bearing my mother's name. "We did it, Mom. Different than planned, harder than imagined, but we did it." The next morning brought reviews all positive. James Chen wrote, "Helen's table doesn't just serve food, it serves hope." Chef Ada Morrison has transformed personal tragedy into culinary triumph, creating a space where every meal reminds us that our scars are proof of survival, not shame. I framed that review next to Mom's photo in my office. Beside it hung my chef's coat from Morton's bloodstains, still visible despite cleaning, a reminder of where I'd been and how far I'd come. My phone buzzed with messages. Congratulations, interview requests, reservation please. But the one that mattered most was from an unknown number. "Dear Chef Morrison, I'm a culinary student who lost partial use of my left arm in an accident. Everyone said my career was over. Then I read about your restaurant. Could I possibly intern with you? I want to learn that limitations don't mean the end, just a new beginning. Sarah." I responded immediately, "Yes, start Monday, bring your passion and patience. We'll figure out the rest together." Because that's what we do. We adapt, we survive, we create beauty from broken pieces. Grace had thought she was ending my story. Instead, she'd given me the most powerful chapter, the one where I stopped needing their approval and started approving of myself. The lunch rush approached. Orders printed. My team took positions. My damaged hand gripped the expediting spoon while my left did the detail work. "Let's cook," I called out, and my kitchen came alive. We weren't perfect, we weren't traditional, we weren't what anyone expected. We were better. We were proof that sometimes the best recipes come from improvisation, the strongest teams from shared struggles, and the most meaningful victories from refusing to be defeated. Every ticket, every plate, every story we served proclaimed the same truth. You can try to break us. You can damage us. You can force us to change. But you cannot stop us from creating something beautiful from the pieces. That's what survival looks like. Not a return to what was, but an evolution into what's possible. And what's possible, I'd learned, was so much more than anyone, including me, had ever imagined. The orders kept coming. My team kept cooking. Stories kept spreading from our kitchen to the world. And somewhere I hoped Mom was watching and smiling, knowing her brave girl had finally learned that courage wasn't about being unafraid or undamaged. It was about taking whatever life left you with and making something nourishing from it. One imperfect dish at a time. Have you ever had to rebuild your life after betrayal from those who should have protected you? What gave you the strength to keep going when everything seemed lost? I'd love to hear your stories of resilience in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more powerful narratives about overcoming life's greatest challenges. Share this with anyone who needs a reminder that our scars are proof of survival, not symbols of defeat. Thank you for joining me on Ada's journey. Remember, you are stronger than you know, braver than you believe, and worthy of the love and success you're fighting for. Until next time, keep standing, keep fighting, and keep creating beauty from whatever pieces you've been given.